This is about the power of our energetic heart and the embodiment of our energetic heart. And of course, the power of entrainment, rhythmic entrainment at the very nature of our beating heart. And it's also for anybody who's felt the fragmenting effects of stress. Right now in America, I think we all can feel this in some way or another. There's a kind of epidemic of stress. It affects 50% of Americans have some health issue that is driven by stress, and particularly between the ages of 18 and 33, young people find it difficult to sleep at night because of this high levels of stress. And we know that in the beginning of the 1900s, heart disease, which is very much affected by stress, hardly anyone died of heart disease. And we know now that it is the number one cause of death for men and women in America. We all counsel each other to speak from our heart, to listen to your heart. And if you're like me, there's something inside us that doesn't quite trust this. This is some kind of folk wisdom, even though we feel it deep inside. And I think that's partly because our education about our heart is outdated. And mostly we grow up hearing that our heart is an incredible pump. It pumps some 60 gallons of blood through over 60,000 miles of veins and arteries through our body. But we know our heart is more than a pump. And when we look at all of the world's spiritual traditions, we find this reflection of the heart fire, a light of consciousness and intelligence, a radiance in the heart. And within the yoga traditions there, first we saw the flaming heart of Jesus and this image of Lev, the fire altar of the heart in Judaism, the burning flame of the beloved in Sufism. And in yoga, the heart chakra system has a beautiful understanding that the beating of our heart comes from the samgata, the fire and friction, the desire of the divine masculine and feminine within our own heart. And as long as we explored the heart in Western medical tradition from ancient Egypt, ancient Greece through Renaissance times, the intelligence of the heart was still part of the understanding. And in the 17th century, it was the beginning of what we've partly now been educated, that the heart is an extraordinary machine. But it became devoid of intelligence, became devoid of being connected to our emotions. And I feel that every one of us now is the site of a kind of a cultural turning point, where the new science of the heart, which is now able to measure the electromagnetic field of the heart, is now causing these outdated views of the heart as a machine to change. And so I want to share with you briefly in the TED fashion some of the extraordinary understandings, a little fast, of our heart. We all know that we are born in desire, in sacred union. And when we're in the womb, when the pacemaker cells begin our heartbeat before the brain is formed, that's when this power, this incredible power of entrainment, creates the electrical charge, which then creates the electromagnetic field of the heart. I believe there's some movement that goes with that. And the thing about the electromagnetic field of the heart is that it actually, from that electrical charge, from the specialized cardiac cells in our heart, it actually radiates beyond our body. It bathes our entire body and has an extraordinary communication between our heart and our brain. And this, I think, is really important for us to understand, that when our brain waves in our heart rhythm, and some of you have seen this in the other presenters, when our brain wave and our heart rhythms come into sync, we're in our highest state of flow. We're in our optimal functioning. All the 1,400 physiological functions that get disrupted by stress, when our brain waves and our heart rhythms come in sync, we come into our optimal flow. And for me, when I see the dissonant rhythms, that's for me what stress does feel like. It's this fragmenting rhythm. And that particularly through emotional states that have already been mentioned today, our body comes into a kind of state of coherence almost instantaneously. And so for me, this rhythmic understanding of the power of our energetic heart is something that we can all tap into. And what's so extraordinary is that the electromagnetic field extends beyond our body. And that actually when you're even sitting next to someone or in your relationships, we can feel whether we are in sync or we're out of sync. And this attention is really the underlying basis of meditation in all its forms, is to bring us back into the natural desire our body has, the biological, you could say, intrinsic desire of our heart and our brain. Of course, heart, brain, belly, all of our cells coming into this rhythmic state. And so what's extraordinary is that music, of course, has a tremendous capacity to bring us into this heart coherence. That when we're listening to music, our heart rhythm also begins to syncopate. And this is what I'd love for us to go into now, because we can access this very simply through some very key ways to enter into this connection to what is also referred to as the heart brain. So I'd love for you to stand for our last meditation. And you can give yourself a little bit of space so you don't smack someone. Yes? And the very simple practice of bringing your hands to your heart. We know it. It's already part of our culture. Just bringing your attention to your heart center begins to initiate this syncopating process together. So let's just take a moment and drop in. You can open your inner gaze. We have so much external stimulation. Opening the inner gaze, closing your eyes, begins to facilitate the heart, brain, heart rhythm connection. And then our breath is the incredible pulse that brings these two rhythms that we're focusing on into sync. And so let's feel the wave of our breath as it enters us. Deep inhale. And a long exhale. And just notice if you begin to feel some sensation in your heart. If the fragmentation that we often unconsciously or consciously ignore is not being as important as whatever we're doing externally. That if we could feel this intrinsic desire towards this coherence, and how simple it is, how we place our attention, how we breathe. A third method is to actually move, even move like the pulse of life itself. And that's as simple as, if you can move with me, as we inhale, opening your arms. Just as you inhale, opening your arms. It's so simple. And as you exhale, slowly bringing your hands back towards your heart. And this also begins to facilitate this state of flow, the triad between our breath rhythm, our heart rhythm, our brainwave rhythms. And this is just even our third breath. And just notice, even in 3 breaths, you can begin to feel the state of optimal flow. And now if we add one more dimension, which is to generate openness, goodwill, generosity of spirit. We all feel this when we move through the world, whether it's in our languages, whether we feel someone is open-hearted. And as we do this, we open ourselves to this incredible, just as we move through this incredible It's like a charging station all around you. And then here is the other thing, which is perhaps even a little more radical. It depends on which culture you come from. Whoever's to the right or left of you, give them a hug. Give them a hug. Just give them a hug. And just notice what you feel. And yes, sometimes a hug feels radical when you're in a cool, hip, intellectual environment. But if we knew, yes, you can keep hugging. If we knew how good love is for us, if we knew how good love is for us, and how debilitating stress can be for every level of our systems, then we would perhaps follow our heart and follow this intrinsic biological desire. For me, I'm dedicated to providing these resources as far as I can to as many people as possible, because this, as you know, we've lost a great, great being, Nelson Mandela, and as he describes it, no one is born, no one is born hating another person because of the color of their skin, or their background, or their religion. Yeah. And if we can learn to hate, then we should be taught to love. We're given more space to love, because this is our intrinsic nature. It's more easy to follow what the heart does naturally. So let's bring our hands back to our heart. And this is tending the heart fire, our intrinsic desire of our own heartbeat, our own biological, intrinsic nature. Thank you. Thank you.